Blueprint for Change. A plan to overcome challenges. Blueprint for Change. A guide to help create opportunities. Blueprint for Change. Thought-provoking conversations. Blueprint for Change. Why wait when you can contribute to the Blueprint for Change?
Welcome to Blueprint for Change, the show designed to change your perspective on how you think about national issues facing the Bahamas. We want to help you develop a new blueprint for change. Tonight, we have another interesting guest in the series of discussions on changing mindsets. Right, co-host?
Yes, we do. Very much so. Michael, I'd like to also, on behalf of Dawn Davies Enterprises, thank you for the honor of being able to collaborate with you in this endeavor to be able to change the blueprint in our society.
Well, you know, I'm an advocate for collaboration. So,
yes,
and I see we have an interesting guest who too is a collaborator extraordinaire, if I must say.
Yeah. So what we have today is we're going to continue on the conversation on the mindset in the new environment, the new built environment. And so just to prefix a little bit, we have Mr. Mel Chin. I'm not sure if the guests would remember him or know him, but he's a noted conceptual artist whose work has pushed the envelope. And he has said that the creative act enables the evolution necessary to counter a soul-crushing conformity, and the replication can mutate, sparking an explosion of options. And so, as we know, we talked about our iconic guest that we have today, who is a change leader in himself, and developer of people, and has a career that reflects that comment by Mr. Chin. And so we're going to ask him some questions tonight, that one which is, what opportunities exist for the orange economy to drive change in the new built environment? How will the digital environment enable the orange economy to be a lead driver in the new built environment? And which skills are required for artists such as straw vendors and app developers and small men to thrive in this new built environment? So we're looking forward for this innovative and tantalizing conversation with our esteemed guests.
You're not going to put it too much on the spot, are you?
No. He can handle it. I know he has good blood. So
yes, I must say so. He does. Yes. Come from good stock.
Before you go, Mike, and welcoming him, I would like to also remind our guests or let our viewers and listeners know that you can make comments and place your questions on our Facebook page, Blueprint for Change Show, under the event dialogue there, discussion thread. So, Mike, if you would do the honors of welcoming our guests.
Oh, I would be very much so honored to do so. So our guest tonight is someone who I've always admired. In fact, I could say that I only admire him primarily because of his father. So, you know, he has some big boots to fill. So his dad and I worked together. You know, his dad being the engineer extraordinaire of the country, someone who's made a notable impact on the built environment. And so I got to know his son, who I thought was going to be an engineer, but he decided to go on his own path and become the artist extraordinaire. And so without further ado, I would like to welcome John Cox to the show tonight. John, it's been a pleasure. knowing your father and then by extension knowing you.
Good evening, guys. How are you? Thank you very much for allowing me to be on your platform. I was very excited to learn that this was an opportunity for people to learn and share and dialogue. So I'm very honored to be here. Thank you. Thank you very much to both of you. Thank you.
You're welcome. So, sorry, I just want to ask John one thing before you dive into it, Happy. So, John, other than the fact that you've made inroads in the art community, and people still don't understand what that means, which is fine. I guess that's the work of the historians to figure out what work you've been doing over these years. Mm-hmm. But one of the things I think it'll be important for the listening audience to get an appreciation for is, what is this thing called the orange economy? Because it's been buzzed around for a while. And so once you explain that, then Happy will ask you to, dive into those other questions.
Yeah, no, not at all. Again, thank you for letting me be on the show. But yeah, so this orange economy concept is something that is new, fairly new. But it essentially is, I guess, comes from the perspective of, I guess, the economics world, the finance world, kind of measuring, I suppose, the impact that different segments of society have on a community, a society's, a country's stability, right? The kind of impact that certain demographics and certain professions and certain cultures, what contributions come from these areas, and how and what type of impact, mostly, I guess, financial and economic impact, do these subcultures contribute to the overall stability of the general economy, right? So people could look at the economy and could break it down, and I'm certainly not a finance guy, that's for sure. But you could look at the economy and you could kind of cut it into, you could cut it up like a pie, and you could say, right, this percentage of the economy is supported by this. This percentage of the economy is supported by this, and you can kind of analyze it from a present scenario, from a past scenario, and also from a scenario where you're making projections about what you anticipate will come. So essentially, it's the orange economy, and I could be doing it a disservice because it's kind of infinite in its kind of possibility, but it's where creatives contribute to the overall economic stability of a community or a country or a greater region, etc.
Right. Well, we know, both deceased, your father and Jackson. Your dad, was always passionate about art, and Jackson, was really the protagonist about trying to get us to all come to the realization that art has a significant contribution in developing any economy, and particularly that of the Bahamas. So, right. And I think you're really in a large way demonstrating in what that could really mean in terms of how do you translate that artistic expression into art form that could speak to commerce.
Right. I mean, one of the things I'd like to just throw this in here, because I was very honored and lucky to start my art career and be guided by all of the kind of major art figures who are way outside of my generation, and Jackson certainly was one of them. Max Taylor, Stan Burnside, Brent Malone, all these folks were very, very, very kind to me and very supportive of me when I was quite young, and made me feel like that I had a place at the table. And the older I become, the more I realized just how valuable that attitude they had towards me was. And one of the things for Jackson, who's in particularly quite important to me, is this is the year 2020, which is turned into a bit of a upside down year.
Yes.
But Jackson's famous quote, well, one of his famous quotes was, "By the year 2020, more people would come to the Bahamas because of art and culture than for sun, sand, and sea." And that was one of the things, that was a mantra for myself and for my team. That we really kind of wanted to, that's an auspicious goal, right? That's takes a lot of audacity to kind of say that. It is a worthwhile and very worthy and very, very possible reality for us to be striving towards. And I think that in a lot of ways sums up a lot of the ethos of what we discuss in terms of how the orange economy kind of exists, or what the potential of it is in an environment like ours.
Right. Happy.
Yes. Okay, so if we could put a little bit more context on that for our listeners who might not know as much as you, John Hawkins, who is considered to be one of the pioneers of the creative economy, which we understand to be the same as the orange economy. He said that the creative economy, or the orange economy, includes all the sectors whose goods and services are based on intellectual property, architecture, visual and performing arts, crafts, film, design, publishing, research and development, games and toys, fashion, music, advertising, software, TV and radio, and gamers. And so he is including all of those things as the orange economy, whereas I guess the creative economy would have been pure artists, if there's such a thing as a pure artist in those days. And then UNESCO, who is a great supporter of the Bahamas, the organization, says the culture and creative industries are those that combine the creation and production and commercialization of creative content that are intangible and of a cultural nature. These contents are usually protected by copyrights. Copyrights, and can take the form of goods and services. Besides all artistic and cultural production, they include architecture and advertising. That's UNESCO. So the question we will start off first would be is that based on your account and the two definitions, would you define the global mindset of artisans in the orange economy?
Sorry, say that again, Abby. Say that again.
What would you define what you consider to be the global mindset of artisans in the global economy?
Oh, I see. Okay, what would I define? Boy, in the global economy, I think it ranges. I think from region to region, it's different. I think that I could. Why don't I just deal with our region, right? I think that the Caribbean is unique. I think in the last couple of decades, we've seen a very strong interest in the creative aspects of Caribbean culture coming through and being kind of spoken and projected into a more global kind of conversation. And I think the Bahamas is certainly a part of that. So I think that we are in more of an infancy stage in terms of the way the world sees and values culture. And certainly, one of the things, I'm going to go back to Jackson on this right now, but I think one of the things that we need to understand first for us to appropriately, I guess, get the litmus test on how we see creatives in society in general is how we understand and value our own creativity. Because I think that there's a big part of it that a lot of people who are, and I think we use this term happy, you brought this up earlier about the two different definitions, one kind of focusing on the creative economy and the orange economy seeming a little bit broader, the creative seeming more like it's just artists.
Right.
Really, I think that the kind of broader term recently is that people refer to themselves as creatives who are in this world, whether you're a musician, whether you're a visual artist, a dancer, a choreographer, a writer, a curator, somebody who is like a festival planner or whatever. People kind of see themselves in this regard. So across the board, I don't think it's easy to answer with one answer how the world sees creativity now, because I think certain parts of the world really see it and they reap huge benefit from it.
Right.
Whereas in other parts of the world, other parts of the other regions, like we in the Caribbean, I think we are certainly making huge waves in the right direction, but it's still you still need to, there's a lot of work to be done. You have to keep reminding people. You have to kind of be an agitator for creativity, an agitator for people's mechanism to understand the value and what they do and how they should recognize their value and act accordingly.
Yeah. So with that in the region, then when we look at the Bahamas as a unit in that whole scope of conception, we say we are at the infancy level for the region. So where would we sit in the Bahamas in relation to that? At the beginning, at the birth, at almost going to be a teenager or toddler?
I would say that we're more like a pre-adolescent. I wouldn't say that we are like a toddler or anything like that, because it would be highly disrespectful for me to think that this thing is just kind of starting now, right? So all of the work and all of the work that artists have been doing for decades and decades, we're building on that today. I think that the Bahamas, in particular, within the region, is positioned perfectly to be the leader of the entire region in terms of how we can set up opportunities for artists and creatives throughout the entire region. I think we just have the infrastructure, we have proximity, we have, at the moment, the value of the dollar. We have access, easy access for the world to come to this space. So I think that we have all of the ingredients in the Bahamas to really lead forward in terms of platform development and opportunity building for creatives throughout the entire region. I truly believe that.
So, Api, sorry, let me just jump in a sec, because I was just listening on my way, just in terms of, John, the economy of the Bahamas is being talked about because of the pandemic condition that we're faced with, and the fact that a lot of people in particular or traditional sectors have been impacted by loss of jobs. And the country as a whole, its major, tourism industry has been basically put on hold, I call it. Mm-hmm. But you're saying something very interesting, and I wonder to what extent are we going to truly latch on to what you're saying, because the belief, and I think it's a mythology, the belief system that we have is that we can't pivot, and that it's going to take time, and that there's nothing we could do, and we don't have the resources. See, when I hear all those limitation commentary, I think we're doing ourselves a disservice. But from what you're describing, the orange economy actually is limitless. And I think because of our unique proximity, as you just said, and our creativity, we should not have a problem, expanding and really developing what the orange economy can do for our economy. What do you think, and how should we? Because Happy talked about the mindset, and I think it is a mindset that's trapping us.
It is a mindset, and I think I have to look at my own kind of career over the last 6-7 years working at Baha Mar, a position that I really truly appreciate. It is certainly not a job without challenge.
But isn't it a job you created, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, yes. I created the current, I created the concept, the framework, the structure for it. We worked for several years pre-opening, curating the entire property, and then we kind of put together another framework to make it operational with revenue streams and all of this type of thing. And one of the things that I recognized in the past 3 years that the current brings to the table, the empty seat at the table that it fills is, or it has the potential to fill, is the mechanism that artists have to realize how to develop themselves professionally, right? And how.
What do you mean by that? What do you mean by that, John?
But essentially what it boils down to, and this is not a popular thing to say, is that the artist with the greatest reach is not always the artist with the greatest raw talent, right? Talent alone is a wonderful and beautiful and ephemeral thing, but you need to be able to combine your talent with a system and a platform that allows you to kind of, it's like taking a tablet that has like a time release, right? That like goes into your body in accordance with the next time that you're going to take the tablet. I think that what we need to do, or what we kind of should do, or think, or be thinking about, is trying to train artists and trying to condition, when I say artists, creatives, to understand what their value is, and to be able to kind of equip them and empower them and educate them and expose them to the mechanisms that give them the greatest longevity, right? That give them the greatest perpetual upward trajectory, right? In their value and their ability to create income for themselves, for their ability to not just create income for themselves. Initially, that's what everybody's thinking about. But really, what happens is if you create a very strong community of creatives where there's opportunities for everybody, and what I create for myself actually creates a need for somebody else to kind of support me, which creates another need for somebody else to do something, and somebody else to do something. That's when it really, really tips the scale, and we start to see that. And so one of the things too, in a corporate environment, you have a lot of people who think defensively, right? You think that they are, because they're managing huge amounts of money, there's huge amounts of money to be made. So there's a tremendous amount of caution, right? Which kind of governs the way companies run, right? And I think it causes them to kind of stay in a safe space, in a space that is very guarded, and becomes on some level quite predictable. In some instances, I mean, I hate to say it like this, just outright, it becomes predictable, it becomes boring, right? And so problems are solved in a way, and let me see, I have this idea and I want to pitch it to you, and let me guess, you're probably going to say no, right? And that's the kind of thing. You know, I'm going to reference Jackson through this entire thing, so forgive me. I remember one time he said to me, and he was borrowing words from another architect who I think was a mentor to him, and he said the answer to how is yes. And so what we need to be thinking about is creatives are now finding themselves in these corporate environments because creatives are solution-based individuals, right? So creatives don't think that you can't do things. They think, oh no, how are we going to do that? It's not just, oh, we can't do that. You say if you're going to make a painting and you would normally make it with acrylic paint, and you say, well, I don't have acrylic paint, but I do have coffee, but I'm going to make the painting with coffee, right? So I'm going to make the painting with something. There's just, so that as a metaphor, you have these people thinking of ways around getting to destinations that we can meet these kind of thresholds, right? So that is entirely possible. I mean, I'm a testament to that. I have a team of people that have been working with me for years and years at Baha Mar, at the current, but prior to that at my other studios and at UB and at the National Art Gallery, etc. And this has been the example that I've always followed and I've been inspired by, and I see more and more of it happening all of the time. I see it happening now. I see it with documentaries that I'm inspired by. There's a great documentary called Beautiful Losers. And it's about all these guys who are kind of misfit artists, designers who are in their early, teenage years and early 20s, and that they track them over a period of time. And then they become the head designer for Pepsi Cola. And all of a sudden people shift around. You're like, wow, how is this guy in charge of this, multi-million-dollar budget?
Right.
Who essentially was a reject 15 years earlier, right? And it's because I think the thought process is one of optimism and curiosity, and that's not without responsibility. I think that a lot of people think that artists are flighty and flaky and irresponsible, but the best artists are the opposite of that. And very, very open-minded.
All right, so Happy, I think this is time for our first break, and when we come back, you could start to drill our dear friend and your family in terms of this digital environment and what does it mean to the blue economy. So, Mr. Producer, we'll take our first break and we'll be right back after these brief messages.
Eleanor Roosevelt said that great minds discuss ideas, average minds discuss events, and small minds discuss people. The ultimate design starts from thought, and thought is a product of one's mindset. And so if we're going to change from where we are now to where we want to go post-COVID with the new environment, the new built environment, we have to change some things in order to get a different result. Because if we keep the same mindset, we're going to only get the same result that we've always gotten.
I think more importantly than looking at what has transpired and who is at fault for what has transpired or who's not at fault, it takes more imagination, vision, and visioning in order for us to understand how we're going to get out of it. Let's change our mindset from being employees to being employers, from being workers to being owners.
Your perspective on how you think about national issues facing the Bahamas. We want to help you develop a new perspective and a new blueprint for change. So just before the break, John was, really getting into this whole question about the role of the artist. And Happy, I know, you had some interesting questions you wanted our dear friend to kind of expand on, particularly this one about the digital. That's the one I'm really curious about, the digital environment. Speak to that, Happy. What do you mean by that?
Well, in terms of the digital environment, I'm going to join that to John in a minute, if I may, delay it a little bit. But I wanted to segue what we were talking about before, which was laying the foundation for what was happening, and now go into what is required to create the environment for success in the economy. And if I remember correctly, the Honorable Minister Michael Pintard at the time was Minister of Youth, Sports and Culture. And at the opening of the Gate Commission at the NAGB, he made some comments that surprised the audience. And a lot of them were pertaining to his exhort that the artist needs to be activists. And they need to stretch the government in its and the like, and in order for the mass of persons to benefit. And so what I wanted to ask was, what is that environment that needs to happen in the 242 in order for, or what the orange economy needs to do to cause an environment for us to be successful in the 242? You mentioned we're going to be the leaders in the Caribbean. What does that mean? Does that mean that that could create a third of our GDP in terms of reach, as in the labor content, the creatives, the entrepreneurs, and the like? We could sort of halfway, art and tourism go hand in hand, but what does that really mean? What's your concept on that?
Yeah, I believe that he is not wrong when he talks about the artists and creatives using their practice and their voice for change, for systemic change. I do think that's something that should be encouraged. I think it needs to be managed as well, just like everything else. You need to make sure that you don't burn yourself out and make yourself put yourself in a position where you kind of lose your power by being overly argumentative to no real end. But I think that, there's another saying that, it's better to ask for forgiveness than to ask for permission. Yes. And artists are perfect at that. If we want to think about, the street artists, the graffiti artists, or we call it like the guerrilla artists, right? That whole attitude where, you know, you go out and all of a sudden you change the landscape overnight. You know, graffiti artists do that all the time. I think as a metaphor, as a way of kind of a systemic change, I think that we can kind of put policies in place through our own institutions, whether they be grassroots or whether they be government subsidized institutions like the NHEB. I mean, I think that Amanda Colson does a fantastic job managing the NHEB in a way that it has had tremendous reach into the community over the last years that she's been running it. And also the programming that they offer just empowers so many creatives to understand and to give them a voice, to learn and to dialogue and to be able to kind of create these connections with one another. So, I mean, to your point, Happy, I do think that there's a challenge with government and politics because it's a tennis match, right? The ball moves back and forth so quickly that and unfortunately you don't have players who respect one another on either sides of the court. I think the whole notion is that if I'm in the championship match and I'm playing whoever I'm playing on the other side of the tennis net, I somehow have to have all this animosity towards them. To be able to also undo everything that they do, which is why I think a lot of creatives just circumvent that entire dialogue, because we recognize that everything that gets done, and people are very politically very emotional in this country, not only in this country, I think in the region, in the world, but in particularly in this country, and that has not been a productive wave for us to ride. So I think to your point, Happy, activism is definitely key. I think that you can have your effects heard by being the loudest person in the room or by being the quietest person in the room, but being able to kind of put together systems that run up against day-to-day popularity, how many likes you're getting on Facebook or Instagram or whatever at any given moment, because this is what the trend is. I think if you're going to be a true leader, you have to be kind of you need a coat because you might be alone for a little while.
Right. Yeah. But aren't we image makers too, though, John? Because that's one way to be an activist, is by the images you create.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that there's a way to kind of do that. I mean, we see that all the time. I mean, all kinds of artists are doing it. We have such a tremendous body of female artists right now, just are really leading the country. I mean, by far. I mean, in my estimation, I think the female artists have just taken over in a way. I mean, you know, most of the people that I'm most moved by are females in this at this time. And I also feel like this, just even that shift in perspective, I think, is an important one for us to think about, because that certainly reflects a lot of where I think some of our challenges lie as a country, as a history. I think that we're kind of set in our ways that we don't even imagine that there's another way to do things. Yeah.
So if we look at that, John, COVID-19 has really wiped the canvas clean for the Bahamas in many ways. I don't think it's done so for the orange economy. I think the orange economy actually just continues to thrive on. But when we look at that, if you have that new canvas to design what the environment is that you want, we know we're not short of activists in the country. We might be short of being able to articulate it in a way that will provide results that we want. So what skills do you think, other than the talent, the raw talent that an artist may have, that they would need or want to acquire or sharpen so that they can be successful in this new environment?
I think it's one of the skills I would say would be to think, you know, Obama talked about the long game, the long and the short game. I think we need to be thinking more about the long game. I think being able to recognize and put in context your talent and being able to connect your talent to others. I think that there is, simply put, there's just power in numbers. And I think if we are able to kind of imagine ourselves developing more platforms and opportunities for collaboration amongst the artists, and just form allies. I think we really need to get away from this us and them that there's an enemy out there. I think that the enemy that we create is the enemy that we create. I think it's one that we kind of empower, and I think that we are so much more powerful than the things that oppose us. And when we give life and breath and attention to things that seem to be holding us back, I think we just make those things stronger. I think that there's so much of that. That's one of the things where you mentioned before, people in the orange economy seem to be thriving in this time of COVID-19. And I know we're eventually going to get to this digital platform stuff, which I think is key, which is, I think artists are just loving every second of this. But we need to be thinking about, the content of what we have and just thinking about the medium. I think that COVID-19 has caused us to think about how are we going to do this? Well, we know what we need to do, but how are we going to do it? And I think it's the how is where the creatives come in. Like, this is what you do. You do it with your right hand, or you do it with your left hand. You do it with paint, or you do it with a chisel, or you do it with a jigsaw, or you do it, with a movie camera, or a saxophone, or a pair of ballet shoes, or with your pen, and you write a script, and then you make a movie about this thing, and it causes people to be connected and to be inspired. And I think that, that's really the breakthrough. I think that we need to stop thinking about successful creative stories, i.e. in the big context, we look at Apples and Googles and, and all these other things like that, and just think about them as being anomalies. I think that we need to stop doing that. We need to stop making art a mystical thing that can't be developed. It can be developed.
Now, John, you're touching on sensitivity there. Some people believe that, the art is such a mystical and mysterious, and only few could, aspire to become an artist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that those notions might be problematic, though. I think that a lot of that is, why art remains on the hill, and people don't think when opening that they're invited to come, because it's only for the few, and only the rich have art in their homes and that kind of stuff. And I think that, there's somewhat of that is a bit of a cartoon that we kind of play into. And I think, certainly we want things to be powerful, and things are exclusive, but they are developable. They can be developed,
Yes.
Yeah. So we have a question here on Facebook. We've now said that we have the ideal optimal environment, and we also have the skills you articulated. So the question from Facebook comes in from Jason Ming Ferguson. Okay. Said the biggest challenge in the Bahamas is the value placed on creatives and getting proper access to funding to create. And that was going to be a question that I had on my item also, in terms of what are the obstacles, whether it's capital, as the question from Ferguson says, or is it access, which he also references, or is it something else? What if you could answer his question in that whole bigger picture also?
Right. I think that's an excellent question, because I think that's one of the things where we need to be administratively creative as well, right? So we need to kind of take what we're talking about with our own practice and apply it to administrative procedures and policies and things like that. So to his point, we need to be aware of the opportunities that are there, right? So we talk about UNESCO, we talk about all of these grants that exist. I mean, the Andy Warhol grants, the Jackson Pollock Prize, the Guggenheim you could just go on and on and on. People don't realize that these things are available to them.
Right.
I think NAGB and a lot of other institutions now are quite good at putting out there, did you know you could apply for this residency? Did you know this? Did you know the next thing? And then from an individual perspective, you could expose yourself to that. But a lot of people who kind of find themselves running organizations or quasi-organizations need to or should consider creating the correct kind of status for their organization, right? Thinking about, well, should I register my organization as a not-for-profit, and what does that mean? Does that mean that then I'm eligible for these grants or this kind of tax write-off from this company here, there, or the next thing? And then from a government policy perspective, we need to be able to remove the hurdles that prohibit people from doing those types of things. Because I think a lot of people say, boy, I would love to register my company as this, but boy, I can't do that. And no, I need lawyer support for this. And no, I don't think I'm going to be able to do that. Or it takes so long to get this done. So, this is why it's important that people who are contributing to this orange economy, it's important that we recognize that not all of them sit there with like a superhero suit of I'm an artist and I'm the orange economy. There's people who are wearing suits, who are working in the bank, who are accountants, who are lawyers, who are contributing to the way this thing works because they have an appreciation of the art. I always remember, and sorry for all these stories, this is Jackson rubbing off on me because he was as you know, right? But I remember when I was at then COB, and I used to teach the survey of art class. I used to teach Bahamian art appreciation, also the second part from the Renaissance to Contemporary art appreciation class. And it was full, like always full, 30 students in it. And very, very few, the art majors, which are very few at COB at the time, would have to take it. And so they would only occupy 6, 7 of the spots. The rest of the spots would be filled with people from anything, biochem, banking, from accounting, from nursing, and whatever. And a lot of people say, they just take the class because they think it's an art class, it's going to be easy. And I was like, well, I don't think it's easy. I think hopefully it's more interesting than it is easy. But I always realized at an early point that it was almost more important for me to be teaching those people than the artists, because the artists are going to get it. Yes. They're already decided to be there. But I want to teach that person who's going to be the loan officer or who's going to be a bank executive 20 years down the road to say, oh, this person is going to bring this project to me, and I'm going to be able to understand what the potential of this thing is to the contribution to this orange economy that we discussed so, and so articulately today is really kind of supported by that. I remember thinking, the Black Lives Matter mural that was painted recently in DC. And I think the mayor of that city or whatever had to approve that. Like somebody needed to approve that was going to happen. And I was thinking to myself, boy, like as an idea, if that lady was not that it was me teaching the class, but if that lady was in a class where somebody was talking about the power of art, that is one of the most powerful murals. And it's just words. Yellow words on the floor. That is powerful. That should be in the Museum of Modern Art, right? That is a statement. But somebody had to enable them to do that. And I think so when we start to think about how people are contributing to it, it's very important for us to understand that it's not just the Van Gogh with the air cut off cartoon that we're thinking about, right? Because that's what they kind of sum all of us up as, right?
Okay, so John, you added education of the general public on the movers and shakers in society is a critical part for creating that environment for the orange economy to excel. So we switch over now to laying the blueprint, right? To allow all these entrepreneurs and artisans to become successful. You in yourself is a blueprint in my mindset. When you came home, a lot of people didn't know you came home with art like what's behind you. And people looked at you like you were from Mars. Right? And you painted a whole picture.
That, right? John, that still happens, right?
Yeah.
You painted a whole picture of leading people through the transition from what I consider to be fine art. I know Dominique fusses me to say that's not fine art, but I define it as fine art, but where you're drawing real people and all this kind of stuff, right? So into abstract art and then all the what you call it things, the structures and stuff that you do and the like, and then the intangible art that you do on a daily basis. So you had, like you mentioned, your mentor was one of your mentors was Jackson Burnside. Jackson said that what makes the clapboard house special is the what makes the clapboard house special is the native ingenuity of the people and their response to the environmental and economic conditions of the time in which they lived, right? And so when we look at that, and all of the issues, which I'm sure Mike will know in terms of clapboard house and what all benefits came with that design, which we seem to lose, and then now we have issues with the hurricanes of today. When we look at that whole big picture, then let's ask the question as to what would be the basic blueprint, other than saying me, look at me, copy what I did kind of thing. What would be the basic blueprint for budding artists in the 242 to get started so it could be mobilized? And then once they're mobilized, to be able to make those critical steps to move themselves forward.
I think that we need programming. We need dynamic programming from within the traditional discipline areas. We need to have a support system that not so much in a way leads by saying, do what I tell you to do, but leads by clearing a pathway for people to discover for themselves what value they have. As an idea, Happy, one of the things I think when you talk about a blueprint, and kind of looking like at a bird's eye view of a situation, a map, a plan of the situation, is for me, what I think we need to do is start to dig canals from separate bodies of water, right? We need to kind of connect these bodies of water in a way that they can more easily access one another, and not just from one creative body to another creative body. I think we need to start thinking about where these bodies of water connect with other bodies of water that one would never imagine would have any relevance. I think we need to think about where does banking intersect with the creative community? Where does medicine intersect with this now? I mean, we look at COVID, we look at all of these things that are going on at the moment, and we're thinking, okay, well, what can we do to kind of keep pushing through this? And I feel like the artists and the creatives out there just have all of these ways of making these things happen. I'm just waiting for the app to come out that's going to be able to enable us to understand where we are and what's going on with things, and being able to kind of like see people and see through scenarios in a way to just give us comfort and enable us to kind of interact with one another in a more kind of comfortable and meaningful and confident way. And so we need more infrastructure, Happy. And I think that the infrastructure is more about creating the road for people to drive on, not putting them in the car and saying, drive with me to this spot and get out and listen and then drive to the next spot.
Okay, so that ties right in line with what I was going to ask next, which Mike is eager to get to. Is
yes.
In another place we designed the digital environment some 20 odd years ago. Okay, and we have only used it for consumerism. We really haven't used it for production, to produce things that we will gain from, right? So you, on the other hand, along with your team, have created something called the Blackbird's Pod. I think that's the way it's called. And so the question is, how will the digital environment enable the orange economy to be the lead driver in the new built environment? And piggybacking on how you used it for education and the like with the Blackbird's Pod.
Right. So I guess just to give people a little bit of context on the Blackbird's Pod is because of COVID has made education virtual. And so the school year started about a month ago now, a couple of weeks ago. And so what I've done along with a couple other parents and there's many pods, but we've created a digital platform for kids for a very, very small group of kids to come together to have a more whole experience around their education. And what we've experienced over the last few weeks is that, wow, this is a beautiful thing. Like it causes us to critique the way school was in the first place and wonder why maybe models like this may not just exist. I mean, we just look at the way the kids have been responding. So, I mean, the idea that you have the digital platform, that just how we're doing this now, the ability to look through the screen into another space and to have this experience that you can have without actually without having the experience in the normal way or in the way that it had been happened in the past, was this kind of transmission in a way. And what it kind of forces you to do, or forced us to do, is think about like what you have to say or what you have to provide, and just the kind of little things that you can do using the very simple technology to kind of be able to create experiences for folks that, so you look at the digital platform and you go, oh, well, I can't go to school and I would normally be in a classroom with 15 people. But now all of a sudden you're on a platform that you could see 1,500 people. And all of a sudden you're like, wow, I have so much more reach with this. I think that social media has kind of been onto this for a while now, that people have concoct this very, very powerful Instagram kind of presence, and they have all of these followers and all of these. I don't want to think about it in terms of followers. I just think about reach. And I think that the digital platform now has created an opportunity for us to see just that as an artistic medium. The digital platform becomes the artistic medium for us to provocatively connect and speak and communicate to people. And I think the good thing that artists have on their side is they always have great content. They have great things to do. It's them. I remember at work, one of the senior VPs was saying to me, he's like, you have a very, very interesting team. And so what you need to do is you need to start selling the personalities of your team to the guests who are coming. So it's not just like, I'm not serving you a drink. I'm not serving you, your meal. Not that there's anything wrong with that. But what I'm doing is I'm serving you me. Like I'm know about who I am. This is what I think about this. This is, and I want to dialogue with you, and I want to give you an experience that you have not yet had. And I think that kind of trickles back to what Jackson's talking about, art and culture. So people are coming to a space where they don't sit down and drink a margarita and sit by the beach and not necessarily move from that space. And if you squint, you can't really tell what country you're in.
Right.
The idea is that when people travel around the world, they're actually interested in seeing the history and the complexity and the irony and the humor of the countries that they go to. When you go to, Cambodia or to Vietnam, you're fascinated to learn about the nuances of the Vietnam War and all these things like that. But here, I think that we're hung up on these notions of paradise, which I think we have been kind of projected on us. So we kind of feel like we can only be a one-trick pony. And which I think is contributing to what you're talking about, Michael, about this economy that doesn't seem brave enough to diversify itself because, we can't do that. But we really don't know why we can't do it. But we just don't do it because we've been told that we can't do it.
But it's interesting, John, you triggered something very provoking, which is, who says that tourism is about movement of people physically moving?
Right.
That why can't, like this experience we're having now, why can't we begin to redefine what is the tourist experience going to be like? So why can't I have a conversation with someone in Cat Island and pay for that experience because I can have a conversation with them, and I don't have to jump on a plane to do that.
Right, and I think one of the things that excites me at the moment is, so I have members of my team, and what we're working on right now is these virtual art experiences for people, virtual art tours, virtual art classes, and the sales and marketing teams from several of the brands at Baha Mar are very, very excited for us to develop this concept because what it does is it creates, we're basically taking a part of the resort to them.
Yes.
And so we're taking a part of who we are. I don't want to think about the resort in that regard. I want to think about we're taking a part of a unique creative experience that is unique to the person who is teaching the class, not scripted, not a PowerPoint presentation, to these folks. So if my team member is Samantha, and she is awesome at what she does, she all of a sudden can teach 200 people in 2 hours, where she could only probably have taught 20 people or 30 people in 2 hours. And so now all of a sudden, it's not that we're saying that we don't want you to come, but you don't necessarily need to come right now because
Yeah.
you're still going to be able to have that experience. And so one might imagine that having a unique, maybe a little bit more unique than drinking a margarita that you could drink anywhere. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
The margarita's not actually from here in the first place.
So before we get to the end, very shortly, as time always flies,
Always.
the statement would be then, if we're talking about laying the blueprint that will allow the young entrepreneurs and the like, even old the guys to
And not so old.
yes, to be successful, then the blueprint that you just defined in terms of all of the different things that needs to go into that big the plan that we look at from overhead, then the digital environment, how would you say will that accelerate ease of achievement of the goals?
I think it accelerates it because most people now walk around with an internet-driven device in their hand, which is smart enough to handle the most basic function. And within that basic function, there's a tremendous amount of opportunity. I think even though, sometimes having too many buttons on the remote control doesn't do anything, you want a simple device. Access to internet is something that I think is going to ultimately need to be free to people because the challenge, I sit in a position of privilege. We can talk about the Blackbeard's pod and all that kind of stuff. All of the parents who are doing that, we have privilege. So we're able to create an environment that does that. And we're lucky that we have internet and, we have good internet and the internet still drops. But we need to be able to empower the infrastructure, the electronic virtual infrastructure needs to be accessible to everybody so we can connect with everybody. So people are not lost in the conversation and feeling like, I didn't get it and I didn't understand what was going on. So that educating, exposing, empowering scenario needs to be something that is very accessible across the board.
Right, and so the Bahamas is have a high reach, but somebody like myself who would have gone on Facebook back from 2009 and be a sort of writer, not a good one at that, but in terms of journalism, not so. And then also now venturing into talk show. So and it's all because of the digital. It's allowing us to do things that we weren't able to do. So would you say to all of the young persons out there who are budding in the industry, young in terms of novice, that's the word I should use, novice, not young.
Yeah, not young in age. Yeah, young in experience.
Novice, that they could use that blueprint that you developed with, say, creating the pod, the Blackbeard's pod, and some of the other things with the education in Baha Mar, virtual education and the like, to then use it and become successful at something and reach not just the 5 or 10% of the population that we normally reach, but now maybe reach 40 to 80%.
Yes,
and make people more economically viable for themselves.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I think that you're 100%, you hit it right on the head. What ends up happening is if you give access to that to people to see, I think people need examples, right? And I think they look at an example and they say, oh, wow, I'm inspired. They need inspiration. And so they see what you've done and they can build on what you've done. And so the opposite of a political dialogue, which is the ball is going back and forth, it's not actually advancing. It's like stuck. What we want to be doing is we want to be moving the ball forward every time.
Right.
And so
and growing it too, right?
And growing it too. And so what COVID has done, I think for us, the blessing that, I know it's hard to think of this as a blessing, but I think the blessing that what COVID has brought us to recognize is that I think people are recognizing that we don't want to go back to the way it was. We want to go forward. And so, okay, we want to have a new normal now that's actually better than the old normal. So, and I think we just need to keep advancing. And I think some of the hard realities is that COVID has caused us to realize that we were doing a lot of stuff that we really didn't have to do. The amount of people who say, you drive by these office buildings and go like, there's nobody in there working. Everybody's working and getting everything done as efficiently as we were before. So what is this? What's the
building for?
Yes. What is this actually
the mindset.
And so to look at that and go, wow, how are we going to deal with that? There's a lot of things that we need to be thinking about. I mean, I'm very. It's certainly a frightening time. Emotionally, it can be quite. It can kind of grip you. But I think it's also an exciting moment. I mean, I think about post-Dorian and all of the horror that brought, and I think about my dad. I mean, Michael, you understand this.
Oh yes, very much so.
You understand this too.
Yeah.
I mean, him being a civil and structural engineer is like how exciting an opportunity to rebuild something from zero. Like, what would you do if none of this were here and you had to redo the whole thing? It's not an opportunity that you often get.
No.
And you look at it and you go like, boy, how could we rebuild this and not volley the ball back?
Yes.
Like it was before, which is what happens in politics. That's not volley the ball back to the other side of the court, which is just going to come back to the other side.
Right.
Think about what we could do moving forward, and that moving forward is also difficult because systems don't allow you to rethink yourself. You have to do it. The bank told you to do it, and this is how you can do it.
So happy. I think we're gonna have to make that the beginning of the next show with John, because we're completely out of time.
Mm-hmm.
So
can I
John. So
that like orange is my new favorite color.
Yes.
Like, I don't know why? Like I'm actually all I do is drive around and see the color orange everywhere.
Oh, okay. So opportunity is for hope and prosperity for the country.
Hope is a weapon.
Yes. All right. So this John, it's excellent. Thank you very much for agreeing and happy. Thank you for convincing your cousin to come on the show. We have to have him back.
No, I'm happy to be here, and I blame Jackson for rambling on me because I ramble.
Don't feel badly. I mean, he rubbed off on many of us, so it's a good thing.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. So you've been listening to Blueprint for Change, the show designed to change your perspective on how you think about national issues facing the Bahamas. We want to help you develop a new blueprint for change. And John, thank you very much for shifting the mindset, as Happy says.
No, thank you.
Happy, you want to close us out on the COVID? Remember of COVID?
Oh, the protocols, yes.
Yes.
We need to keep our physical distance, wash our hands, wear our masks, love digitally.
Thank you, and good night, everyone. See you next week.
Take care.
All right, thanks a lot.
Take care.
Blueprint for Change is a collaboration between Michael Diggiss and Associates and Dawn Davies Enterprises Limited.